Does this sound like you? A new exciting game idea pops into your mind. Your imagination starts going wild with a possible story and mechanics and art style. You quickly spin up a new project in your engine or framework of choice, or maybe you reach for one that you've been curious about. You're super productive over the first few days, adding the early foundations of features, and maybe you've even told some friends about it and they think it's a cool idea too. But before you know it, the honeymoon phase kind of starts to wear off, and you have this laundry list of bugs, and things aren't working out quite as well as you thought they would. You enter that classic sludgy middle phase of any project where the to-do list just keeps growing and your morale starts to dip. A different exciting project idea kind of creeps into your mind, and you'll just explore that idea for a little bit. Like I can balance both projects, no problem. But before you know it, that first project just becomes abandoned in some directory on your machine, and the cycle repeats itself. If this describes your behavior, you should know that you are not alone. I personally feel this way all the time. We as game devs are constantly at risk for being knocked off track or having other projects give us that shiny object syndrome. So in working on my games over the past few years, I've come up with a few key mentalities and habits that have really helped me anchor to finishing the projects. These 4 things have really helped me, and so I want to share them with you today. So let's dive right in. Tip 1 is to have an accountability buddy. So the real reason I think people quit games is because they feel alone. You have this mountain of work to do. It's exciting at first, but then when you get into that sludge of it all, that endless graveyard of bugs can be really demoralizing, and you don't have anybody to share that pain with. It's easy to be tempted to switch projects to something new in greenfield where none of those problems exist yet. But of course they will eventually. The camaraderie of having a partner or two in a project can really help sustain that momentum. When you're feeling low or not excited, your buddy can be there to pick you up, and vice versa when they're not feeling so hot about it either. Even if this person isn't working directly on the project, like editing art or writing code, that kind of thing, having someone that knows and cares about the outcome can be that morale boost you need when you're feeling low. They can also help by playing super early cuts, doing some QA work to find bugs, and especially helping you focus on the next most important thing you should be doing. So in my case, my friend Glenn and I work on games together. We have a weekly call every single Tuesday night where we screen share and share progress of things we've gotten done over the week and bounce ideas off each other. Back in the days of our first game, Danger Crew, our calls would look like us talking through huge lists of bugs and feedback that Glenn would have after playing the latest cut of the game. And even though sometimes it could feel like there was always more to do after those calls because, we'd be talking about things and establishing new ideas and all that, his involvement and enthusiasm just really kept me going as the person that was writing most of the code. In those moments where I was feeling just really overwhelmed or down or just unsure about the whole thing, he really pulled me out of that, and it wouldn't have happened without him. And I get this tip is tricky because you may not have that perfect person in your life that you can, talk to every single week about the game that you're working on. But if you don't have that person, I really encourage you to join our Discord community. I'm in there, and I'll totally check out the game that you're working on. There's a really helpful group of people there that are pushing each other to help each other keep going. So if you're feeling stuck and you need that accountability buddy, but you don't have one, feel free to drop in there. Tell us about your project. The link to that is in this video's description. Tip number 2 is to focus on releasing vertical slices instead of the whole game. A vertical slice is a demo of your game where all the necessary aspects to play the game are working, even if they aren't totally polished or tuned. So let's be really upfront about something. Finishing a game is a ton of work. There's code to write, art to make, stories to be written, music, sound effects. They all take a lot of work, and it's probably not your full-time job to get this thing done. It's tempting to daydream about that final day that you get to release the finished game to the real world, but in reality, it's probably going to take you a long time to get there. So instead of focusing on that final release, shift your focus to releasing multiple vertical slices as you go. The core of the game loop should be there, but it doesn't need all kinds of content. It doesn't need buttoned up designs. It can even use placeholder art, but it should be one playable session that really gives the player an idea of what this game could be or will be. Throughout the process of working on Danger Crew, we put out a demo on communities like CodePen, I'd say once every 9 months or so. They started out really simple, but ended up getting more complex as we went. By the time we released the final demo, the whole game was pretty much figured out on what it should be. From there, it was just a matter of us adding a bunch of content to it. For another game we have in the works called Happy Grumps, we're trying Steam Early Access, which is pretty upfront about this game is still a work in progress, but you can check it out right now and see where it's at. Putting out a vertical slice is useful, of course, because you can get that feedback from people as they play early cuts of your game. But the real thing I'm poking at here is that putting something out into the world, even if it's still just a work in progress of the game, is a really good positive feeling. It can be really depressing and crushing to sit on a piece of work for too long before showing it to anybody or having people play it. And so if you can get into the habit of releasing vertical slice demos as you go, that takes a lot of that burden off you to get the whole thing done. From there, you can iterate on your vertical slices as you get feedback from people and then sort of step your way to that final release. Around this time, it's also a good idea to build any tools you need for yourself to add that content to the game to help yourself actually get it all done and in there. I recently did a different video about making an editor for yourself, and I'll link a card somewhere right now. Tip 3 is a little bit of a fuzzy one, but it's knowing when to zoom in and zoom out. I think there's a certain spectrum of focus that exists when you're working on a game. I like to think about it like zooming in and zooming out. So imagine for a second your game is a skyscraper. You can zoom out and get a full picture of what the building looks like and kind of what it is, what shape it generally is. Or you can zoom super far in to just the exact details on like floor 27. Like what color is the carpet? What do the decorations in that one room look like? So zooming out and thinking about this project at a high level is asking yourself questions like, what is this game and why are people playing it? What's the story behind these characters? Like, what is this universe? These are the kinds of things you'll probably need to think about when you start to market your game, and how do you communicate what this game is to other people? But then there's zooming in and focusing on the most minute details of the game. If I attack this enemy, how good does it feel to bonk them with the sword? So for example, in Danger Crew, there was a move called Slice, which you used a lot during battle. It was a simple offensive move. When we first built it, that move had a placeholder animation that felt just a little bit wimpy. It wasn't satisfying to use the move, but you used it all the time, and so something about the whole game just didn't feel fun. So I took a day or so just to zoom super far into that one animation. Adding flashing and sound effects to the move made it feel more impactful and just more fun to use. So after that change was in, it felt really good to deal damage. Even though the game wasn't actually any different, all the numbers and all that stuff was the same under the hood, just that extra good feeling of the animation feeling right really put new life into the game. It was enough of a new life to give me that spark of inspiration to add other animations and to really just make me feel excited about the whole project again. But on the flip side, if you've been too in the weeds of focusing on these tiny, minute actions or just the animations, maybe you should try zooming out, like writing some dialogue for the game or writing a backstory for the game. If you have some mechanics that feel really good on their own, but you're not really sure how they're going to be used, maybe sketch out a level design and apply some of that why thinking to the game. Like, why am I using this move? The key here is that if you've been feeling kind of stuck or unhappy with the project right now, figure out where you've been focusing your time, whether you're zooming in or zooming out, and do the opposite. The changes you make might spark a new feeling of inspiration that the project needs to keep going. It could even cause a chain reaction of new ideas. Tip 4, try to capture ideas for your project every single day. So finally, this last one might sound a little bit simple, but I think it might be the most important one. Ideally, you could be working on your game every single day, but I assume you're a busy person with responsibilities and commitments, and you probably only have limited time to work on this game. I know for me personally, when I have days that I'm not working on the game at all, that's when some of those other ideas can start to creep in my mind and I start to sort of lose focus on what I was working on before. On those days where you don't have any time to work on the game through like code or art or music or whatever you're trying to add to the game, try to write just at least one idea down. It could be anything like, here's a big idea for a whole new mechanic, or something really small like, this line of dialogue would be funny somewhere. It doesn't really matter what it is, as long as it's an idea that you're serious about. The important thing here is that you are just recording it so that your mind stays a little bit active on the game project. So you could use a notebook, like I've got one right here that I keep on my desk all the time, or you could use a digital product like Notion, something like that. Try to just always have it around so it's easy for you to just write something down at a moment's notice. Again, for me, doing this every single day really keeps my mind engaged on the project and helps fill those potential gaps where other ideas could give me that shiny object syndrome. I've been doing this for one of our upcoming projects, and even though we've been working on it for like 2 years and it doesn't seem like progress is really happening, it is, because I have this backlog full of ideas. Be very careful though and listen to yourself when it comes to burnout. If you truly need a real break from the project, take a break. One of the worst things you could do for yourself is truly burn yourself out where you just have no interest in doing the projects at all anymore, and that would be super bad. Whenever I'm feeling that way, I personally just like to turn everything off, play video games, go running, surround myself with with other kind of creative work that just gets me inspired to do things again. So to wrap this one up, try to keep your project somewhere in your mind on most days, but don't destroy yourself over it. So those are the things that I rely on for staying focused on actually finishing game projects and avoiding that junkyard directory on my machine of like half-finished ideas. Remember that distraction by new ideas is a reality and it's going to happen, and that's okay, but I do think that part of finishing games is building up that muscle of discipline to stay focused through the trudgy parts when things get hard. I hope these things have helped you and you got some value out of this. If you did, I really appreciate it when you hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this one. And like I said before, if you're working on a project, you should join us in Discord and tell us about it. We'd love to hear about whatever you're building. I'm in there. I'd love to see you there. Thank you so much for watching. I'm stoked to see what you create, and I'll see you next time.